We can call the September 11th meeting of the Public Works Committee to order. As it is our tradition, we'll take the consent agenda. Are there any items to be pulled from consent? Item C3
Move for approval of the remaining.
Second.
has been moved and second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? It's unanimous. Item C3.
Resolution approving the River Chase Neighborhood Traffic Calming Plan for funding and construction. This item was remanded to the Public Works Committee by City Council on June 17th and continued from August 13th, Public Works Committee meeting.
Councilmember Bessie.
Thank you. I'm just seeing for the first time the additional page memo that's been left at our places and would ask, I guess, Mr. Turner to go over that information.
Certainly. What we do is we solicit input from the affected entities whenever we do a traffic calming project. When we did the one off of Northampton Drive in Oak Ridge community, we got some feedback after the devices were installed that the school system was, because of their usage of school buses, concerned about driving the buses over the humps. And as you can see from the email or from the memo, they've indicated that because of the requirement from the state that they now use buses longer and the effects of humps on their suspension, that in that location they had to relocate the school bus stops for students and are requiring the students to go to a location where the buses won't have to go over the humps. In the case of River Chase, we don't know what that effect will be. They've indicated that they'll make that decision after the humps are installed, if they are approved by council and installed. We wanted to bring that information to council as additional information. As you recall, it was remanded from the full council back to Public Works for additional information on the amount of development activity that has taken place since the original maps that you saw were done. And so that information, as well as street level photographs, are included in your package. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. You've referenced the Oak Ridge community and a speed reduction. I'm not surprised to hear about the speed reduction. Remind us where the Oak Ridge community is, please.
Oak Ridge is off of Northampton Drive. It provides a cut-through between Northampton and Butterfield. And so that's one of the concerns the neighborhood had, was about cut-through traffic as well as speed. In the case of River Chase, I think the concerns are more focused on speed and somewhat associated with the people who live deep in the neighborhood speeding past the homes that are shallow in the neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, my experience is most of the folks that are speeding through a neighborhood that's not on a major travel pattern or live in the neighborhood. But I mean, more to the point here in terms of the of my general concerns about the utilization of speed humps on public streets. I happened to be at a firefighters event on Saturday, and just by coincidence, Mr. Clark and I were having a brief, spoken conversation about this being an item on the agenda for today. And one of the firefighters overheard, and just on his own, I mean, it's not a formal city event, so this is just him expressing his personal opinion, but volunteered his great concern for the use of speed humps because it does make it difficult for the fire trucks to access. And I can't mentally map what neighborhood he was specifying, but he noted one in which speed humps had been installed in Winston-Salem and indicated that they were now having to avoid going through that neighborhood. It was increasing the time that it took them to respond to calls in a nearby area. And he thought that personally these were a terrible tool to use on public streets. And that is frankly exactly what I think about. I would like to see us my personal preference would be to see us change our policy altogether and exclude them from consideration as an option. At the very minimum, require that we utilize the speed lumps kind of method that, in which you don't have a continuous vertical structure across the road, but you leave gaps that emergency vehicles can aim for so that you space properly, so that they may have to slow down to hit the gaps, but they're not having to come to essentially a halt every time. I had expressed this generalized concern previously, but just in the past couple months, it seems that we have started to see an influx of approved plans relying almost exclusively, or at least very heavily, on speed humps. And if we're going to incorporate a policy change, I think we've got to get ahead of that. I would encourage our returning this to the review process with instructions to staff to, review with the neighborhood alternatives to speed humps for the situation, at least including, but certainly not limited to, the speed lumps kind of alternative that would not create difficulties for emergency response vehicles in that neighborhood, as well as any place that may be on the other side of it. I'm suggesting that for discussion here today.
Councilmember Adams?
Again, that was one of my points as to whether the neighborhood was given all the options and maybe even explained about what some of these do. Even if it just takes one person to go to, they have a neighborhood meeting or something. I would hate that they have done all of the things that you need to do based on our present policy, and they've gotten their award, and we pulled the plug on it, But I too feel like maybe if we can just explain it to them about how crucial it is for emergency medical or emergency vehicles to get to people in the neighborhoods. If we do the lumps, my question would be, does the neighborhood streets allow parking on the street? Because if they do, to me, then it almost kind of defeats the purpose of putting a lump. I have no problem with it. It's just that if I'm on a fire truck and I'm coming through a neighborhood that allows parking, I may not be able to get around that lump. Also, I'd like to see some data on how many neighborhoods within the Winston-Salem area has speed bumps, and if we have heard any feedback from them, yay or nay. Again, my concern is that they've done everything they needed to do, and if this is what they want, I don't know who was leading the charge for this, Mr. Turner. Do we know stuff like that?
We just know that it was a request from the neighborhood, but we don't know who the initiator was.
Okay.
There is a representative of the neighborhood, or there's a member of the neighborhood who's in the audience today, if you wish to hear from them.
Yes.
Yes.
Come to the podium. Give your name and address.
Okay, my name is Charles Allen, and my address is 3965 Creekmore Drive, and I'm the president of the HOA now. At the time we started this, I was the vice president. I could address some of your concerns with the neighborhood. It's not necessarily a shallower neighborhood with a deeper neighborhood issue. It is a separate neighborhood entity into its own that had a back street that was connected to a neighborhood that has two other entrances already. But the way our neighborhood was designed, it's almost a straight shot over to a road, so people use it as a shortcut, but it's only a shortcut if you go really fast. And our road being a straight, wide road, everybody using it like a drag strip. It was my impression that it passed overwhelmingly, and in regards to emergency crews, we have firemen and policemen who live in our neighborhood who were in support of this also. So it's been We've had the city came out, met with us, we had homeowners meetings. We walked around and talked with people about it. We formed the task committee, we're aware of all of our options. The speed humps is what everybody went with, the larger, wider ones that only reduce speed to what is posted, the 25-mile-an-hour posted speed limit. It's not to reduce it, they're not the axle crunching, short, fat ones that you see in parking lots. It was explained to us, they were the wider ones. We had one neighborhood resident who has a handicapped child. They didn't like the first speed bump being before it because the only school bus that comes through there is theirs. That speed bump was removed. They're spread out pretty evenly, and it's, my understanding, it's designed just to reduce the speed to 25. And like I said, it was overwhelmingly approved, and everybody's really anxious for
Any questions?
these.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
if anyone
Mr.
has
Conlon,
any-
I don't know if you're the gentleman, I'm not very good with remembering names that I don't see a lot. My apologies. But one of the folks from your neighborhood had sent me an email.
Right, that was me.
Okay, and I thought I recalled in it that that staff had not discussed alternatives with you.
No,
Staff-
no, what I was saying was your email back was expressing you felt there were better alternatives, but I mean, in your email back, you didn't discuss any of the alternatives you felt were better, so I didn't know. We were giving a package. I mean, we had to form a task force to review the package and present this, and everybody go over what we felt was best, and then that was presented to the community, and that's what the community voted on. So we followed all the procedures in place, and we were given, it's a manual this thick of all the options you've got with the narrower streets, you know, the
Around the
brick looking, I mean, with the texture road, all that stuff was given to us, and it was decided that the speed lumps would work best for us in our situation.
Did anyone from staff discuss with you sort of the pros and cons of using the vertical measure?
Yeah, we worked very close with Rod Ring. He was very helpful. He was very insightful. He came to several of our homeowners meetings to talk with residents. I mean, we didn't go into this blindly, everyone there, and it was, to my knowledge, overwhelmingly approved.
Well, I appreciate your, discussing it with us, and understand the concern. I am not surprised to hear that a majority voted to support the alternative, even if, even if the cons were considered. I am afraid we're going to get that reaction spreading through a lot of neighborhoods, and that we'll end up with a crazy quilt of areas that fire trucks and essentially can't go down, and that all sorts of emergency response vehicles have difficulty with, the school buses have problems, and while I respect and appreciate the time that the neighborhood has put into that, I am still concerned about the spread of this option, and cannot, in the absence of extraordinary circumstances, can't that as an alternative.
Well, as I've said, we've got, firefighters, policemen that live in our neighborhood who approve of this, that would like this in their neighborhood. The one school bus that we have doesn't even have to cross a speed bump. The other school buses stop at the entrance to the community, so.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you.
Mm.
So what is pleasure, committee?
See if it gets a second. I'd move that we hold this and ask staff to meet again with the neighborhood and discuss alternatives, including the speed lumps.
Is there a second?
No second.
Motion dies for lack of a second.
I move that we approve what is the resolution as it is from the neighborhood about them.
Do I hear a second?
No second.
The chair will second. There is a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
That is 2 in favor, 1 opposed, 1 absent. All right.
And I have
Oh,
a point to make. If we're at that crossroad where we need to start changing this particular process, then we need to, I thought we had done that over the past year. We went and relooked and redid, and then, I'm of the adage again that the neighborhood gets to decide that, and they have to understand that when the fire trucks come and the police, it may take them longer to get down through there, but if the decision was made by the neighborhood, I think we should, you know, allow that. Again, the data that you get me on how many neighborhoods have the speed bumps or humps. I know in Baltimore, it's like practically every neighborhood in the inner city has speed bumps to keep people from, you know, the speed. And they build new ones every year. Every time I go back, there's another street with it, so.
I'd like to move that we ask staff to revisit the question of the use of speed bumps, and that we look going forward, that we discuss as a full-fledged agenda item, changing our policy to include a strong discouragement of that option.
I'd be happy to bring something back for committee consideration.
And just one also question on the same matter. In terms of what policy the Winston-Salem Forsyth County School System has changed the policy or has a policy in terms of putting the stops outside of traffic calming areas, is that just overall policy in all neighborhoods?
They'll make a decision on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Oh, and if I may, when we have the discussion in committee, I'd like to invite representatives from police, fire, and sanitation to come in and discuss the impact on equipment.
Noted. All right. Item G1.
Public hearing on the proposed renaming of Manley Street to Millworks Street, located in the Northwest Ward.
This will be presented by Lynn Rusher with Planning Department Division.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're here today to talk about the renaming of a short segment of Manley Street to Millworks Lane. The segment we're talking about is this little one here in the middle. And Manley Street is a long street, well, it's not long, it's multiple segments. There's a segment in the West End neighborhood, and there's a segment in the Thurman Street neighborhood. And we have concerns about this little disconnected segment being called Manley Street. Oh, we'll get to that in a minute. This all came about during the renovation of the West End Mill Works building. And they, during the renovation, we have new tenants, and the orientation of their building required address changes from Bridge Street over to Manley Street. And at that time, we thought that Manley Street, this would be a good opportunity to fix the potential problems that we have with that name on that short segment. The property owner circulated a petition. Petition was signed by all property owners on that street, and the name was proposed as Millworks Lane. And I think that's pretty much all the points. Do you all have any questions on this?
Any questions?
Just a quick one. Do you foresee any continuing difficulty with the two remaining
Right.
sections?
That's a really good question. We have a lot of disconnected segments, and we try to, when we can, fix those. And I know council doesn't like to deal with street renamings as a whole, but we do feel that disconnected segments are a problem. And so when we can change them, we like to get them fixed. It could be a potential problem on the others. Both those neighborhoods are fairly historic. Actually, West End is very historic, and Thurman Street's pretty historic too. So I think both those neighborhoods and those streets are fairly well established in the fabric of our community. And I think having the big gap in address ranges and that might help. Of course, the best thing for the pie in the sky solution would be to change one of the other segments, but I don't know if that's what we want to do.
Is there anything we could do short of just completely dropping the Manley, like North Manley, South Manley?
We have, our addresses are based on a grid. It's roughly 52 and 40, not quite, but roughly. So everything north of 40 is north, any street that crosses. anything that doesn't get a north or a south if they don't cross 40, or if they don't cross 52, they don't get an east or west. So no, we don't like to put fake north and fake east on things. We do little things like do ridges, so Manley Ridge, you know, things like that. We've done that for other streets. We stick a little adjective in there.
Okay. Councilman Adams?
I don't know, maybe I beg to differ on the east-west, because you got East 25th Street, and then you got West 25th Street, or West 26th Street, and we're not crossing a highway, we're only crossing Patterson, or Thurman, or Cherry, or something like that, or University Parkway. When you say you have this big gap of numbers, explain that. I mean, I know what it is, but tell me what some of the numbers are that there's such a big gap.
I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I mean, that's a considerable distance there, probably half a mile of address ranges in there. So let's just pretend that this one stops at 3,000, this other one might pick up at 6,000. Just work out with it.
Again, my concern is Manley at the top of the north top of the page, and the Manley at the bottom, south end of the page. My concern is this, you got this street that people have known for years as Manley, and now we get ready to just change the name.
No, just this little part in the middle.
I know this little part, I know where it is. This used to be in the North Ward, but it's not there anymore, it's in the Northwest. I grew up off Thurman Street. I am just, like I said, every time we rename a street, I know again, we went over this in this committee, did we not? In that process, there are reasons why we change the names, am I right? Mr. Turner, what do you think about this?
Well, the small segment that's there in the middle that's proposed for renaming doesn't make sense to be named uniquely. I think the point that we're making in response to the question about whether the northern and southern portions should be considered for renaming is that those are established neighborhoods whose name is closely associated with those who live there. They have a very strong affiliation with the name of their street, and to make a change to those would be difficult for the residents. The small section that we're proposing would not be difficult because there's only 3 or 4, well, appears to be about 3 properties affected. The separation that Ms. Rush was alluding to between the orange to the south and the orange to the north is that there's probably a 3 to 4 block difference in the block numbers. So if you're in the 700 block of Manley, which would be the southern portion there, you can see 7th Street to the right of the map, then it's pretty easy to know that 700 and below is the southern portion, and probably around the 1,000 block is the northern portion, 1,000 and higher. So that 300 number separation makes it pretty easy for the emergency vehicles to know what section they're supposed to be aiming for when they're going to the area.
I remember when we did Hope 6, and I'm just bringing some history. See, I told you I'm getting like Ms. Burke. I can speak some history about this city. And we went into Kimberly Park and Happy Hill, and we changed the names of streets that were embedded in the history of the communities. Manley Street is one of those streets. And again, it was in the North Ward for years. It just got, I think, into this ward when we did the redraw. And if not the redraw, the last redraw, but I remember always Manley right there was in the North Ward. I just have a problem, and my counterparts have heard me, I have a problem when we start renaming streets that have been a part of this community forever. We've not had any people die or anything, or building burned down, you know, from the police or fire, so, you know.
And just to be clear, staff's recommendation is just a small orange piece.
I know,
not
I
the
know,
portions
I
to the
know,
north or
I
south.
know. But I'm gonna bring this up because I do hear this a lot from the African-American community, that we don't seem to mind changing streets that are, again, applicable or whatever to the African-American community, if all of a sudden we are developing a property that probably will be predominantly white. And our neighborhoods are becoming, whereas they're, you know, there's this around it, everything changes, and you got this community in the middle of it, and we all kind of know what's getting ready to happen right there off Northwest Boulevard. But I'm just bringing that up because people have mentioned it. I mean, you know, so food for thought.
Any other questions? I have a question in terms of, were there any, at any point in time in the history of this road, did it go all the way through?
From my research, I can't see that it
No.
did. There's a creek through there.
Yeah.
On the other side, there's a railroad track. So if people probably could maybe walk through fog and stuff, but I don't think so. Also, if you look at some historical maps, it seems that a lot of streets just sort of went straight north or straight south, and they kind of have done this. through
Jump.
time. Yeah, they jumped.
They jump.
over
That's
streets.
what we call it.
Because I was gonna mention similarly that, just in the area I represent, that there are similar streets such as this where there are areas where they can go straight and then they end and then they pick right back up again in terms of, is that something in our planning, or is that something just how it was done, or are we from street changes and now they're running through, or is there any systematic thing that's going on to cause that, or again, as you say, just that when we started platting streets, we just ran north and south?
I think that's how it started. Looking at the map outside my office, which is 1924 map, there are, especially the really old ones, they're very straight and right angled. Of course, today we prohibit that, but we don't duplicate street segments just for this problem. And other ones that were historic, they have been changed. You'll see them through the southern part of Union Vista, northern part of Ardmore, right around those meridians I was talking about earlier. So through time, things have been being fixed.
Okay, that's all. Okay. All right, well, at this time, is there anyone here to speak to this matter? Open up public hearing.
My name is Jay Dunbar. I'm a partner at West End Millworks. I guess we would be responsible, along with the city, we were in cooperation with the city with this
Sorry.
naming.
Can you give your address?
My home address is 2238 Holyrood Street.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. And working with the city on this renaming, we thought it would be in our interest to have a name on the street that reflected the work that we're doing down there, which is revitalization and rehabilitation of historic properties. And the goal is to energize that part of the community with some new retail and creative manufacturing opportunities, and that this renaming would be to the benefit of that project and the benefit of the entire area. And I really don't have anything else to say, but hope that you guys will see it that way.
Are there any questions? Just a comment. All right, if there are no one else to speak during the public hearing, we'll consider the public hearing closed. Any comment, Councilman Adams?
Yeah, I'm going to support it, but again, going forward, I think we may need to revisit every time people come to us now with these changes, attach a couple of pages as to the process of, like this one is applicable to this and why. So I'm expecting that process to have this in it, that developers, people, homeowners should not just be able to come to us, and they can because it's a democratic process, and want to change streets. If that's the fact, everybody that comes to town with a new development could decide, I want to change the street name. It just sounds better. So I don't want us to lose, like I tell people, the uniqueness of Winston-Salem, what separates us from the other bigger cities in our state. So if you could do that for me, please. Thank you.
Any other comment? But I do have one in terms of the fact of this, in terms of the changing of the name itself. To me, and after just the comments, it was less about hearing about the issue between the segment break and more about the redevelopment itself, which is a little different in my mind in terms of reasoning for changing the name. With that being said, are there anyone motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
That's been moved and properly seconded. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That's unanimous. All right.
Good job.
There's nothing else to be heard before the Public Works Committee. We will consider ourselves to be adjourned.